Well, good afternoon, everyone. I hope y'all can. There we go. Is that too much? Thank you for being here. I know it's a busy time of the year, the session, and many of our committee members are in other meetings, and they will be in and out. And I apologize for that. I just got out of a 2-hour higher ed committee meeting that actually we didn't really vote on the bill. I thought we were, but I see our friends and the senators here. Thank y'all for being here. I'm going to ask Representative Donahue to open us up with a prayer.
Thank you, Chairman. Heavenly Father, we just thank you for this day, and what a beautiful day it is. Be with each one of us today as we make decisions for the state of Georgia. We pray you be with our families as we're away. Lead, guide, and direct us. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you. So we'll get right to it. Today we've got 4 or 5 bills, and my colleague Chairman Jones has got a bill, and he's got a conflict and asked to go first and try to get him to his other appointment. So Representative Jones, if you'd come to the table, and we'll talk about H.R. 1135. I remind our committee this is just a proposal for a study committee. And if you could tell us what bill number we're working off of, the mic's yours.
Mr. Chairman, thank you so much. Members of the committee, thank you for your time today. I am coming to you with the substitute to H.R. 1135 LC 560176S. Does that work, Mr. Chairman? It is. Okay. Okay. Can I proceed? Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the chairman's comments, members of the committee, this is for the request for a study committee. To my knowledge, this bill does not cause the Earth to stop rotating, nor one of the moons of Jupiter to drop out of its orbit. I know that many of you have been approached with the indication that there was a chance that we would stop rotating and causing some type of gravitational pull, but in this case, it's just merely a study committee. And the study committee itself is intended to effectively take a look at what has become more and more of a question. And again, I'm not going to call it a problem. I'm calling it a question intentionally. As we all know, since the pandemic, we have seen a skyrocket in electronic payments. As a matter of fact, I came in front of this committee just about a month and a half ago asking you to effectively make it where cash would always be, I'll say, a form of payment that would be accepted within the state of Georgia. But in this case, what I'm asking for is a study committee to effectively deliberate over the following matter. We want to take a look at effectively the risk and the reward. So if you could imagine from left to right, when you think about the acceptance of electronic payments, if you're talking about Visa, MasterCard, for instance, and I'll sit there just for 1 second, there's the issuance from the issuing bank all the way through the time that you swipe, or in a card not present situation, the time that you put it into the internet, for instance, an Amazon.com site, or the time that over the phone that you provide your card number. We want to take a look at that. We want to take it where at each point is there risk, and where at each point is there money that moves. And that money moves anything from the issuing bank to the associations, Visa and MasterCard, for instance, to the processing entity, etc. The retailers, the businesses, the restaurants, so it could be that 1 or 2 person retail store in your district. It could be that small mom and shop restaurant, all the way to our Fortune 500s that are headquartered here in the state of Georgia. There is an eagerness on their side to take a look at this, and I think there should be an eagerness on the side of the financial institutions to also take a look at it. I think the third part that needs to be looked at, for those of you who do not know, when you submit your sales tax to the state of Georgia through the DOR provides, you can call it a rebate, you can call it an administrative fee, and we need to also take a look at that in terms of how it works within the idea of the card processing fees. So I'll stop right there, Mr. Chairman, and see if there's any questions.
Thank you for being here, and thank you for your interest in this bill, in this issue. Lots of money to lots of people. Is any member of the committee? We do have several in the audience that want to speak to the bill, so we can do that posture. I don't see any questions at this moment, so we'll go straight to several members of the audience. Joe Brannon, Georgia Bankers Association. I see him right there on the front row, ready to go. And thank you, Joe, for being here.
Well, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Joe Brannon. I'm the president and CEO of the Georgia Bankers Association. We're fortunate in our association to represent all the banks in Georgia. Locally focused community banks are the vast majority. We have regional banks and large globally active banks as members. 193 of those banks operate here in our state, and among those, 49 are headquartered in 20 other states that see opportunities to do business in the number one state for business. When we saw Representative Jones' bill had been referred to your committee instead of the banking committee, as a graduate of the University of Georgia with a BS in agriculture, I felt like a homecoming was about to happen for me. So thank you all for letting this College of Agriculture, we didn't have even environmental sciences as part of the name when I graduated. But we thank Representative Jones for meeting with us. The original resolution that we saw, we were concerned about some of the provisions in there, and I have not seen the final draft, but I understand it's far more balanced in our view, and we certainly appreciate that. The credit and debit card system is an incredibly complex system, and because that's before you today, Chairman Dickey, you and I had talked, and you had asked maybe cover a couple of things that might be studied from our standpoint in a study committee. So if you'll give me a couple more minutes, I'll share that with you. We've been closely involved with this issue for decades, and through the efforts of a lot of players, Georgia is an important hub in the whole credit card ecosystem. In 1987, my first session was in 1980, so this is my 44th session representing the banking industry. But in 1987, the General Assembly predecessors, and that spawned the debit and credit card processing industry here. That legislation allowed card issuing institutions, banks, credit cards, and others, to offer cards without rate caps and fee caps. At the time, those rates were controlled by most legislators. We were the first outside of South Dakota to take the step to take those caps off, and based on Georgia's other advantages over South Dakota, like weather, the whole industry moved to Georgia. So today we have that legislation has spawned over 170 credit card processors that now process 7 out of 10 credit and debit card transactions in the entire country. Financial institutions have two customers in the mix, and you'll hear from both sides here. One set of customers are consumers and businesses to whom we issue those credit and debit cards. We take the risk of payment default and fraud losses. The second set of our customers are the merchants, the retailers. Those are the ones that we set up the structure that they can access the system so they can accept payment cards. It's interconnected, symbiotic relationship. Our customers, consumer and business customers, they want the benefit of having a card to buy stuff, and our retailer customers want the ability to accept things to sell stuff. So that's how it works, and we're on both sides of that. There's a cost to running that network. Keep it safe from cyber criminals and keep it modernized. It's paid for primarily with two sources. One is the fees that banks and others issuers pay into the system, and the other is interchange that's paid for by retailers and others as they accept cards. Interchange is an odd word. It's a word that doesn't roll off your tongue when it's related to this issue, but it's what retailers pay to accept credit and debit cards and what card issuers and others receive to help cover the cost of issuing those cards and processing payments. The issuers, financial institutions, the retailers, and all the other participants, we all enter into a contract outlining the term. Interchange rates, you'll hear a lot about that in the study. Interchange rates varies from less than 1% to upwards of 5%, depending on the type of card, the type of transaction, and other factors like whether you've got the card with you or you're shopping online. Most of that interchange money goes back to the banks or credit unions. because that's where the greatest risk is, the credit risk. Other portions are divided between the payment processors and the card networks, which keep the network running. Any change to that system comes with consequences. It's no secret that our industry, we, the issuers, opposed the provision in the Dodd-Frank legislation of the Great Recession that gave the Federal Reserve the ability to artificially set interchange rates on debit cards. We've already seen that decreased interchange revenue has resulted in the loss of some perks we used to get on those cards and fewer free checking accounts. The Fed has proposed to reduce that rate even further, 30%. It'll be a huge windfall to our retailer friends, but however, last month we had 4 members of the Georgia congressional delegation write to the Fed about the issue. Nikema Williams, Hank Johnson, Mike Collins, and Buddy Carter. Quite a bipartisan group of folks that wrote to the Fed expressing concern that that reduction would hurt low and moderate income consumers as they're trying to access traditional bank relationships. But back to the point of the payment study, the study for the payment ecosystem, we don't know what the end game plan is. And Representative Jones, that's where the world could tilt and roll off its axis. So I appreciate that analogy. If it's to go back to the days, if the end game is to go back to the days when the Georgia General Assembly decided that y'all ought to be the ones setting rates and fees, that would be a serious mistake in our view. That would be a serious blow to the decades of work that's gone into creating what we have today, put Georgia on the map as the #1 state for credit card processing. In my 44 years of representing this industry, I've seen a lot. One thing I haven't seen, though, is this legislature taking money out of the pocket of one private sector participant and hand it over to the other when those two private businesses are in contract with each other. So thank you for letting me share that with you. I'm sure we'll get to have more conversations if you all decide to move forward with the study committee. We appreciate your time.
Thank you, Mr. Brown, being here. We certainly don't want the earth tipped off its axis. It might affect our good ag economy we have here
And the weather
in
for
this
peaches.
state. It might. Don't want anything to affect the weather.
Thank you.
But thank you for that insight, and looks like we might have a lot of area to cover with the study committee. Next, Jay Morgan, being here, thank you. If you would address our committee, and we got some other committee members showed up. Thank y'all for being here.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And let me first thank Chairman Jones for bringing this. We are looking forward to a great educational opportunity on this ecosystem that runs along several routes in Georgia, not the least of which is Transaction Alley. I see Senator Albers over here. He's very familiar with that as that runs right up through his district, as well as several other folks here. I represent Visa as well as the American Transaction Processors Coalition. It's a real pleasure to be here in front of your committee, especially, Mr. Chairman. I always feel like I'm coming home when I'm here in this room because of my background that you well know with 4-H'ers and all the great work this committee supports with that. So thank you for that. This has been a collaborative effort. Appreciate the fact that Chairman Jones has listened to us on what we think would be important for not just members of your committee, but for the entire legislature to hear about this ecosystem in Georgia. Visa recently located a headquarters in Midtown Atlanta that's now employing roughly 1,200 folks. They're hiring a lot of folks out of a lot of our university system. The transaction processing companies across Georgia are employing 40,000 folks. And for those of you that use your credit card here or when you happen to be in the nation's capital or at an NZSL meeting or something of that nature, every time you use that card, there's a 7 in 10 chance, as Joe mentioned, that transaction is processed here in Georgia. We're very proud of that. The payments ecosystem that's been built here supported a lot of small businesses through the pandemic that had no other way to sell and collect payment for goods and services but through this system. So we're very proud of it and proud that that's here in Georgia. I want to thank each of y'all for taking a close look at this. I hope you'll follow it closely. We believe that education about this is important. In fact, our coalition has supported a Payments 101 presentation in front of the Senate and House Banking Committees a number of times, and we're looking forward to being a party to this. So thank you again, Representative Jones, for your collaboration on this. I look forward to working with you.
Thank you, Jay, for that. Appreciate that. We'll keep going. Brandy Bickle with Credit Union. Thank you for being here. Love to hear your comments on this study committee.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Chairman Jones. I'm Brandy Bickle, Georgia's own credit union, and we wanted to go up on public record to say thank you to Chairman Jones for his willingness to modify this resolution to be a much more balanced approach to this issue. Just a few quick words to complement what Joe had said earlier. The reason why it feels like Europa might be crashing in on all of us here, or maybe those of us in the financial world, is this is not new for us. This is a giant federal DC fight that we've been entrenched in for several years now. And this is not new for Georgia either. About 13, 14 years ago, when U.S. Senator Durbin sought to cap debit card interchange, we saw similar bills crop up around the country, and we saw one in Georgia. And then Durbin was successful in capping debit card interchange. Fast forward to now, U.S. Senator Durbin is looking to cap credit card interchange. So you're seeing these bills crop up across the state, across the country. This one is different because you're looking to study the issue, which we truly appreciate, looking at it from a broad lens. And the reason why we care is interchange is one of those issues that we, as a credit union, have intensely opposed any attempt at trying to modify that at the state level. And frankly, we've opposed looking to do that at the federal level as well, but state level is much different. And the reason why we oppose that is much to what Joe had said. You're looking at a different system and making Georgia different from the rest of the country. But why do we care? Why am I up here talking about a study committee resolution? We care because of two key components. One is the payment rails, which if you move forward with the study committee, you'll understand how the payment rails are so nuanced and how there's a lot of different parties involved in that. But the other piece of that is fraud. For our 240,000 credit union members, we're up here to just please urge you to be very balanced when you look at this because of fraud. When you swipe your credit card or debit card and there's a skimmer on the device and some bad actor gets a hold of your information, you are reaching out to your financial institution to make you whole. You are reaching out to your financial institution to get a new credit card. That interchange, that piece that we receive as a financial institution, a part of this ecosystem, that helps augment that. Doesn't cover the cost of fraud. It helps augment that. And just real numbers with that very quickly, we reissue up to 7,000 cards a month because of fraud seen at retailers. We have over $1 million of fraud, attempted fraud, that happens a month. Now, is that actual fraud? No, it's attempted fraud. And we're able to mitigate that to a more manageable number because of that interchange, because it helps us create neural networks to help our members. So from our perspective to you guys, thank you for looking at this from a study committee perspective as opposed to a bill. We had bills in the Senate last year. Last year we had several hearings on that. We thank Chairman Jones for looking at it from this perspective, and we just ask that when you look at this, you look at it with a broad lens and be very diligent with it. We know you would. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate those remarks. Lori Godfrey from Community Bankers Association. Thank you, Lori. Welcome to
Good afternoon,
Ag and
Chairman.
Consumer Affairs Committee.
Hey, good afternoon, Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Lori Godfrey. I'm the Chief of Staff with Community Bankers Association. I want to first say thank you to Chairman Jones for working with the financial services sector to modify the composition of the study committee to ensure a more balanced approach. We greatly appreciate your willingness to compromise. The payments ecosystem is complex, and if you determine that a study committee should be done, then we ask that you the study include all aspects of the ecosystem, not just interchange fees, including the benefits, fraud protections, faster payments, and the impact of sales from accepting payment cards. While I appreciate your interest in studying the issue before the 2025 session, the fact remains this issue is not appropriately addressed at the state level. No amount of research, meetings, testimony, or reports will change this. An interchange solution must come from the federal level. If Georgia were the first state to pass some sort of legislation, we would essentially become an island in the nationwide payment system. Proposals have been considered in other states for almost 20 years, and no state has passed legislation due to the ultimate harm to consumers. The infrastructure does not exist currently, and the new systems are costly to businesses. Large big box retailers can easily absorb the implementation cost. However, the impact to the local small businesses within the communities that you serve will ultimately pay the price and pass that cost along to consumers. Consumers are the ones that will ultimately pay the price for this change. Merchants will need specialized terminals and software to itemize and communicate segmented data to the card networks at the time of sale. Small retailers do not have sufficient volume to offset the cost that this change would impose. While big box retailers can easily absorb the cost to implement the changes under various interchange proposals, community banks don't serve our big bank retailers. We serve the small retailers and the business owners who live in your district. They do not have sufficient volume for this change. We hear constantly about increasing cost of doing business, and this would be another pile-on of government-mandated fees. While the interchange fees are typically pennies on the dollar, these pennies help to offset the cost to our community banks for the services that consumers have come to expect. We anticipate that some community banks may reevaluate the cost of doing business for these services and make hard decisions to not offer certain products anymore. Again, ultimately, it would be the consumers paying the price. The state of Georgia currently compensates merchants for their collection of sales tax on their behalf through vendor compensation. Perhaps a change in the current rates for vendor compensation is a solution for the problem in the eyes of the retailers without changing the entire ecosystem of the payments industry for Georgia alone. That's my comments, Mr. Chairman, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. I appreciate those comments. Committee does as well. All right, we got two more. Sydney, Cyril, there you are. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. You know, it's a very important issue when you've got banks and credit unions up here on the same page, and I'm very excited to be here. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, honorable members of the committee. Thank you so much for your time today. My name is Sydney Cyril. I'm the Vice President of Advocacy for the Georgia Credit Union Association. I'm here to speak on behalf of the 2.2 million Georgians who choose to obtain financial services from a credit union. First, again, I'd also like to thank Chairman Jones for his willingness to work together and ensure that if this issue does get studied, the structure of the committee is much more evenly balanced to include all the stakeholders involved in the incredibly complex payment system infrastructure that supports credit and debit cards for consumers. H.R. 1135 proposes the creation of a study committee on consumer purchasing. Well, after navigating proposed legislation last year to exclude the calculation of this interchange fee on the sales tax calculation, we invested time studying and conducting research that would allow us to enhance the conversation around interchange fees and payments with direct answers. So yesterday and over the past few weeks, you might have received a copy of this report. This means a lot to credit unions. We depend on this revenue to offer secure payment rails to our consumers and to offer credit and debit cards. The research that we did is what led to the creation of this report, which conducts information related to the harmful impacts of removing sales tax from interchange calculations. Like Brandy alluded to earlier, this is not new to us, new to our industry. We've seen this prop up all over the country, at the federal level, at the state level, and we wanted to really put some pen to paper and understand how this would impact credit unions, financial institutions, but also consumers, because that seems to be what's left out of this conversation around the payments ecosystem and upending it. So these interchange fees are charged to merchants for the processing of debit and credit card transactions set by the card network, but paid to the issuing financial institution, which is where credit unions come in. And as card issuing financial institutions who receive just pennies of this interchange fee, credit unions increasingly devote more resources to protect members from fraud and to provide secure payment rails. On top of the fraud prevention, credit unions also absorb the loss due to fraudulent or disputed transactions because we're going to make our members whole for the entire transaction, including the cost of card reissuance, which can be $6 to $7 to $8 depending on the level of the card. With these legislative proposals, credit unions would not receive the sales tax discount for which the retailers are asking, yet we would still be on the hook for reimbursing the full loss to the member, because that's what we do. Study after study, from what is in front of you to the Congressional Research Service to the Richmond Federal Reserve, have shown that interrupting the global interoperable payments ecosystem would have negative impact on consumers. While we appreciate the retail community's plight around this long-fought federal conversation around interchange fees, this proposal would only increase the bottom lines for big box retailers at the expense of local credit unions and consumers. So should this move forward and should we study the issue, I would just encourage you to think about your credit unions, think about your local financial institutions and every stakeholder that's involved in the payments ecosystem. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for those comments to our committee. We're going to have one more speaker, Ben Cowart with Georgia Retailers. Thank you, Ben, for being here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Ben Cowart. I'm Vice President of Government Affairs at Georgia Retailers. We represent retailers large and small across the state and have been doing so for more than 60 years. I'd like to express my gratitude to Chairman Jones for bringing this resolution, creating this study committee. I think it is important to remember we're just asking us to study this issue. And the retailers have been asking for this because, as you've heard, we're charging an interchange fee when a consumer buys a product on a card. But that fee is not only paid on the cost of the product, but also on the state-imposed taxes that retailers must collect and remit to the state. Retailers have been facing record inflation. As prices goes up, the amount we pay in swipe fees goes up. To put that in perspective, CMS Payment Intelligence reported that in 2022 alone, Georgia merchants paid over $216 million in interchange fees just on sales tax. So swipe fees are often the highest, second highest operating cost for retailers behind labor. So, and then Visa and MasterCard just raised rates in October and plan to do so again in April. So we're really just looking at a solution to something that's become a bigger and bigger burden onto retailers. So the proposed study committee, we feel like is a crucial step towards understanding the issue and potentially identifying some solutions. We really appreciate the committee's time in considering this, the chairman for bringing it, and ask for your favorable consideration. I've also got a letter that should be in everyone's folders with all of the associations and several retailers, some Georgia-based, that all support this study committee moving forward and us looking at potential solutions to this issue. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Cowart. I appreciate that. And committee members, y'all do have this in your
Yes.
packets from
So several of
Georgia
our
Retail,
associations,
so-
retailers, NFIB, agribusiness, convenience stores, hotels, restaurants, and then, of course, Home Depot, Waffle House, and Racetrack, they're all based here.
Okay,
Thank you.
we're going to try to move on. We're got a few questions from the committee. Represented Thomas, I heard somebody say it might be a federal approach to this. Is that along your line of questioning?
Well, that's why I'm so interested in, and thank you, Chairman. Question, and I'm in full support of credit unions, and Georgia Own is my credit union. But my question is for the community bank. The swipe fees, is it dollar for dollar? Does 100% of that go to fraud protection?
Well, we can. Let me say this. Let's keep the questions to the bill. That is what this study committee is about, to try to study it if we were to pass this bill, and we can get into those. I think the decision today is whether we study it or don't study it, and so I think that's the posture we need to stay in today, instead of trying to. We got several more bills, and I don't want to get into the details of the pro and con. It's a complicated issue, and that's
It
why we
is,
have
Chairman.
the study committee, and Representative Jones brought it.
Understood, and thank you for bringing the bill, Chairman.
Representative Corbett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, my friend, for bringing the bill. I support banks and credit unions equally. I think I owe them both money, so I support them equally. Mr. Chairman, this being a study committee at the proper time, I would like to make a motion.
I think that's the proper time. I would entertain that motion if that's a
Do
motion. So move. Do I hear a second? Got a second? Any other discussion about this bill, H.R. 1135? Hear none. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Hear none. Thank you to Chairman Jones. Study committee is on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Members of the committee, I appreciate it.
Okay, we'll get the paperwork, make sure we get the paperwork for rules. All right. Hope you make your next appointment. Next on our agenda, SB 132. It's a bill that's this committee's been dealing with for a couple of years and have been studying. It's a very important a bill. I think we've had House bills, and now we got Senate bills. And
Sir.
okay, now we've got another sub here. I
Okay.
think Grace. It says 1093 on our sub, which is a Scribner's error. It's actually SB 132.
Correct.
So, members, you will have to
Can I have one?
disregard that and on what's being passed out. So HB 1093 is actually SB 132 by Senator Beach.
All right.
And the
And is
LC number, I think, is correct.
LC 442820S.
Correct. That's
Okay.
what I'm working off of.
Okay.
Repeat that one more time for our committee
LC
members.
LC 442820S.
Correct.
Okay.
Is that what you got? No, that's wrong. Put an X on that one.
So it should say 1093 for those that are looking at it,
Yeah, for those who are looking at it, it should say HB 1093.
which is a Scrivener's error.
Okay, has everybody got the right bill? Okay. Okay, Grace, have we got some more bills? Look for HB 1093 on the thing. This bill has gone through multiple changes. Multiple eyes have looked at this and back and forth for many months. Senator, floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to the committee for hearing this bill. As the chairman said, it passed out last year. It really is looking at, and I think the real crux of the bill is on lines 31 through 37, and basically where the Secretary of Commerce says if you're a foreign adversary, this bill will not allow them to buy agriculture land or land within 25 miles of a military base. I'm sure some of y'all are familiar. In North Dakota, the Chinese Communist government bought land adjacent to the fence of one of our ballistic missile sites. That's scary. They are now buying up farmland as fast as they can. They own 90% of Smithfield Pork. They want to control our technology. They want to control our agriculture. Agriculture is the number one business in our state. I want to protect it for U.S. citizens and Georgia citizens primarily. So that's why this bill does is it prohibits the communist Chinese government, not Chinese people, but the communist Chinese government from buying our farmland, our land within 25 miles of a military base. So it's not just to China, though. It's anybody that's on the U.S. Secretary of Commerce's adversary list, which they update every year. I think there's like 6 now that's on the list that are our enemies, if you will. So we want to protect our farmland. Also, I know there was some talk about residential, and I think that's what you passed out in the sub. I haven't really read it yet, but just to make sure the realtors are comfortable with this. In the old bill, it does talk about on this subsection shall not apply to residential real estate. I have not looked at the changes, but I think there were some changes made by you, Mr. Chairman, or on behalf of you to make the real estate community feel comfortable with this, and I'm fine with those changes. But that's basically what this bill does: protects our farmland and protects our military bases. And with that, I'll open it up for questions. Again, I think we've heard this a lot, but it's a good bill. Ron DeSantis has signed it in Florida. Sarah Huckabee has passed something in Arkansas, and she actually not only passed a bill, but then they actually went back and reclaimed property that was owned by foreign adversaries, and through eminent domain rebought those properties. We need to keep our enemies away from our farmland. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for bringing this bill and the substitute and working on this and multiple people. I'm going to call on our committee expert on this issue, Chairman Perkle, who has put many hours and days into this legislation.
Mr. Chairman, I meant to thank Chairman Perkle because we worked on this hard last year, and I want to thank you for all the effort you put in it. Thank you.
And so, Chairman Perkle, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator, I don't know if you have a copy of this bill, but on line 62, 63, I would possibly suggest that we strike lines 62 and 63. It looks like it makes the exception that we have for leasing of land for ag research in that 38 to 43 area, line 38 to 43, makes that problematic because you're looking at a possessory interest, which you would actually have a possessory interest. I would suggest, if we could, to strike lines 62 and 63, and I don't know how you wanted to handle that, Senator.
Yeah, I'd be fine with that if you want to make that as an amendment.
Okay.
Okay, let's hold that thought for a few minutes. We got a couple of other questions on the floor, and we'll come back and we can put that in form of motion, Chairman Perkle. So, Representative Donahue.
Thank you, Chairman. I love buying real estate. I always have. But for some reason, I'm not allowed to go to China and buy land there. So it seems like this is such a big deal when we want to kind of return the favor. But thank you for bringing this bill. Thank you.
Okay, Chairman Jaspers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, my transportation friend. You know, Center Beach, do we have an idea right now how much, if there is any, or how much, I mean, I'm certainly supporting of the bill. I was just curious that the Chinese government has invested in our state right now. Do we know, do we have an idea?
I do not know that. I know that they just recently bought 100,000 acres out of Napa Valley, the Chinese Communist government farmland. So they are actively trying to buy our property all over the country.
Sure.
But I think we've done pretty well. I don't know the exact numbers, but I can try to get those.
I was just curious, just out of my,
I've talked to the Agriculture Commissioner, Tyler Harper, is very supportive of this. He wants to make sure that our farmland stays in the hands of Georgians.
Absolutely. Well, thank you.
Representative Lim. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I really appreciate some of the changes made here. And just to clarify, I know you said 25 miles. This bill does bring it down to 10 miles. I just had a couple of questions. One, are the realtors now in support of this particular version? And then number two, moving away from housing, because as has been discussed in previous committees, while we've talked about the Fair Housing Act, one of the changes this makes is to say nothing shall be construed to violate fair housing. But we know with the Florida temporary restraining order that was another law that the 11th Circuit put into concern, which was the Foreign Investment Risk Review Modernization Act. And I just wanted to know if you think that this would not be preempted federally by that particular law.
Representative Lim, we have Jeff Lefter with the realtors here. Jeff, are you here? You want to, why don't you come to the mic and speak to that if you would? We'll get that out of the way right quick.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, I appreciate the changes that you've put into this. Our concern on this matter from the beginning was fair housing, and with the removal of the focus on residential, so residential property is now being excluded, and that does point to the definition that is consistent with fair housing, because that Title 8 that it's citing is fair housing in the Georgia statute. The other change in the definition for non-resident alien also then removes that component. You have to be, it has to look at the national origin or any of the other protected classes and be residential, so that that addresses those concerns. As far as other federal challenges, that's not our area of expertise, and so I can't speak to that.
Have you got any other questions?
Those are my questions.
Okay. Representative Cannon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Senator Beach, for particularly the military portion of this military base. I've worked at the Pentagon for several years, and just to get from Capitol Hill to the Pentagon, inside the Pentagon, took about 5 different steps of security just to get in the building. Grew up on military bases, went to military bases, and security there is very tight, and it's tight for a reason. And I appreciate the military portion of this bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, sir, for bringing this bill. I did have a question. I know we've made the exception for residential, but do we define the size of a piece of property that would be residential? Could it be, 1,000-acre home? I want to know if there was a specific.
I just got this committee sub.
I couldn't
I'm not
find it in
sure.
here. It was new to me, too.
I don't know if that is defined. I think it's just residential property, houses.
Okay, so you could have a house on a farm.
Residential property means real estate intended to be used as the purchaser's dwelling, as such term is defined in Code Section 83201. So I think it's just residential.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Representative Martinez.
Thank you, Senator, for the bill. My question is the enforcement of aspect of this bill. How would the Department of Agriculture know who's buying what?
Well, that's a good question. The commissioner's putting that together now to all big parcels of agriculture land, so he knows who has what. And between him and the Secretary of State, they will be the enforcement agency to handle this and to find out who's buying these properties and look at the transactions.
Okay, we'll take one or two more comments from the audience. We got to move on. Adam Bellflower, Georgia Farm Bureau, are you here? Thank you. Yeah, there you are. Please come to the podium mic.
Well, I'll keep my comments very brief. My name is Adam Bellflower. I'm with Georgia Farm Bureau. Just wanted to say thank you to Senator Beach and Chairman Burkle for all the work they've done on this issue. We are supportive of this piece of legislation. And to speak to Representative Limbs, one of your questions about like other federal laws and just intervention there, it is my understanding that by citing a federal definition of countries, that it takes care of any concerns that might be with a federal intervention, because we are looking at setting policy towards countries who the federal government, through their regulations, have already deemed adversarial. So since we're not deeming them as adversaries, the federal government is deeming them as adversaries, it kind of alleviates a lot of those concerns. But we can talk more about that offline. That's all. If you have any more questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you. We've got, if we got any questions, we'll call you back. Got Ms. Megan Gordon. Is she in the audience want to come speak briefly? We're running out of time for this committee quickly, so.
Yes, sir. I always try to be brief. Hi, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Megan Gordon. I'm the policy director at the Georgia chapter of the Council on American Islamic Relations, and I'm here to advise you not to pass this simply because of the litigation that you're walking straight into because of the ongoing litigation with Florida's SB 264 that Chairman Beach mentioned. It does substantially the same thing that this bill does, and was promptly sued by longtime Florida residents, Chinese immigrants with work visas mostly. And they challenge this law, among other things, based on the Supremacy Clause, as Representative Lim mentioned, which says that where the Constitution has reserved space for the federal government, federal law is going to trump state law. And so obviously foreign relations is the territory of the federal government, right? And the federal government has a very complex statutory regime designed to address the issue of foreign investment, spies at home, and similar issues. It's called CIFAS. It's way over my head. Please don't ask me about it. But the point is, the federal government has occupied that space, creating a supremacy clause issue. And the 11th Circuit recognized that just last month, when it granted a preliminary injunction against Florida's bill based on a likely violation of the supremacy clause. For the non-lawyers on the committee, a preliminary injunction requires a recognition that the plaintiffs are likely to succeed on the merits. So they're basically saying there's a very good chance that there's a supremacy clause violation here. And so what that means, and the point I want to make, is that the 11th Circuit, which is binding on us, has said that there's a very good chance that this law, the type of law that we are trying to pass here, is a violation of the Constitution. And so they're currently in the process of answering that legal question. And so while I appreciate the national security concerns we're trying to address here, it doesn't really make sense for us to wade into pending litigation in this way. If we want to do it, the wiser course of action would be to wait for the 11th Circuit to resolve the legal issue rather than joining Florida in litigation ourselves, because someone else has already volunteered to do that hassle for us, so we might as well let them do it and join them. So ask you not to pass that law.
Appreciate you
Thank
being here. Thanks for those points. All right, we've had a very balanced discussion, I think, on this matter over many meetings. I will go back to Chairman Perkle and recognize you for a motion.
I'd like to amend and strike lines 62 and 63.
Okay. We have that motion. Does everybody understand what the motion is? Strike line. Excuse me.
Shall I read it? A non-resident alien with a possessory interest in agricultural land as of June 30, 2024 shall dispose of such possessory interest no later than June 30, 2027, striking that language.
Okay. We're going to have to vote. We will vote on this amendment. So the motion, I need a second. Got a second. Any other questions on the vote for the changes to the bill? Hear none. All in favor? To amend, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. Opposed? Okay. All right. So now the next status is we need to vote on the original bill. Got a motion? Got a second? Any discussion, questions? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Original bill passes. Now we will vote on the bill as amended. All in favor for HB 132 LC SB. Oh, very, very important. SB 132 LC 442820S. Say aye. Aye. Opposed? Hearing. Motion carries. Motion passes. On the rules. So
thank you,
thank you for being
thank
here.
You.
Thank y'all. Thank you, committee. We've got another Senate bill. Thank you for your patience. We do have another meeting scheduled in the morning if we can't finish what we have to do on this meeting today at our regular 8 o'clock Wednesday meeting. But hopefully we can get through if a room is available and the committee is willing to stay. Senator John Albers, SB 472, combating some organized crime at the retail level. I appreciate it. Appreciate this bill. and we're all about law and order here. So I
Thank
think
you, Mr.
it's
Chairman.
in
I've got another
the
handout too, if I could ask you all. Thank you.
okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Table's
Great to be
yours.
before you and your august committee. Senate Bill 472 is an update to the Inform Act. This General Assembly has led on combating organized retail crime. It's a multi-billion-dollar problem that ultimately impacts consumers. We have spent a lot of time and energy because most of this is done by criminal street gangs. It's organized criminals. We've seen them everything from on the news to part of what we're paying each and every time we go to a retail location. This simply adds very minor language to close a loophole and strikes from the existing language by utilizing and getting rid of the way that you pay through a third-party processor. So what that basically means is if you were selling something online and used a credit card and you are a high volume, this is not my grandmother reselling her refinished chest of drawers, but if you were then meeting them with cash, like a lot of people do, for a high volume reseller, this would just have the same basic information that's captured of people's name, address, and phone number to make sure they are real. And I always use the same example. My wife bought me a nice new DeWalt drill for Christmas. If I already had another one at home and I decided, well, I'm going to sell it and put it online, that's okay. If I sell 120 that are shrink wrapped still in the box, I'm probably not an ethical player in that. When we combat organized retail crime, it's great for our great Georgia businesses here. We heard from Home Depot the last time and many others, Georgia Retail Association. There was a little bit of a concern that I think Meta, also known as Facebook to most of us, said that they would have concerns complying with the law, but one of your handouts is how they comply with this exact law in Arkansas that's in front of you. It is not a problem whatsoever. This will ultimately combat crime and go against gangs, and I'd ask for your favorable consideration.
Well, thank you, Senator, for bringing this bill back to our committee. I know we had to rush a little bit the other day with it, and but it's a serious problem in our state and across this country. Do we have any questions? I got let's take a few from the audience first. Well, I won't try here. Let's hear from Hillary Thrower, and I'll come back to any questions from the committee. Yes, Ben can go. Ben, speak to this bill, please, sir.
Thank you, Chairman Albers, for bringing this Senate Bill 472. So this bill will ensure that all online marketplaces are held to the same standards of accountability and transparency, protecting consumers and combating the sale of stolen goods on online marketplaces. So I know there was some confusion last committee, and I'm happy to answer any questions on that. So the current federal and state laws require online marketplaces to verify high volume sellers' information when they meet that threshold of a high volume seller, which is 200 or more sales or transactions of new or unused products that equals $5,000 or more within a 12-month period. So what that does is it just prompts the online marketplace to then reach out to that seller, say you reach the threshold of a high-volume seller, please confirm that you've given us the correct name, address, phone number, email, and then ask for either some identification from government identification like an ID or tax ID. So that is all this bill is doing. The original intent of the bill was to apply to online marketplace. So SB 472 just addresses a critical loophole by extending existing reporting and verification requirements to all online marketplaces, including those peer-to-peer platforms that don't have the ability to process transactions. So I'd ask for your favorable consideration. Happy to answer any questions around this.
Thank you for that follow-up explanation. We've got a couple of committee members. Representative Yerta, Chairman Yerta.
Well, this is addressed to the senator. I just appreciate you bringing this bill. As a retailer, theft is a huge problem. Shoplifting is a huge problem, and certainly on a bigger scale with the big box folks. But to me, this is just a good common sense bill that makes a lot of sense, and I think it will help in that regard.
Thank you, Chairman Yurda.
Chairman Jaspers.
Yep, I have it to Ben real quick. So this is very similar to the Arkansas that's out
Yes.
there. Is that not true?
Yes,
So
it
it's been in effect over a year now. So has there been prosecutions of the people that were trying to stop using that bill and attempting to slow this theft down?
I wouldn't be able to speak to what's happened in Arkansas. I've talked with the Arkansas Retail Association. They feel that this has been helpful there. I don't have direct information on prosecutions, but I think it's important to remember this would be a deterrent from those criminals that are coming in and stealing products from our retailers. It would be a deterrent from them because it makes them be accountable for what they're going online and selling. So this would be hopefully something to stop those people from stealing.
Sure. Thank you, Chairman.
We have one more question, Representative Cannon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We talked earlier, but I just want some assurances that there's some things being done by the retailers internally to prevent theft rather than just relying on the state to pass a law to stop it. So can you elaborate on some things that you're all doing internally on your own volition as opposed to just looking at us for questions and answers?
Absolutely. And then I know Hillary's going to speak after me. She can speak specifically to things Home Depot is doing, but I can talk to some of the things that the Retail Association is doing. We support the Georgia Retailers Organized Crime Alliance, which is, I think we've got over 600 members now, and that is retailers across the state and Southeast, as well as law enforcement. So that organization is to facilitate collaboration between law enforcement and retailers to combat this. We have monthly intel sharing meetings where people get on, share what groups they're seeing that they're getting hit by, share pictures and any identification they have to try to track these groups. We did 5 organized retail crime blitzes last year in the state, which is where we work with, take a certain area, say Perimeter Mall or something like that, all the retailers work together with law enforcement and are communicating throughout the whole day. We're watching people. We have alert to law enforcement when things are getting stolen or suspected stolen, and they would intercept outside of the actual retail establishment. Also, our retailers have put a lot of money into the technology aspect to combat this with RFIDs and different things, ways to track their products so they know if we find somebody with a storage unit full of brand new drills, they have RFID numbers. You can tell exactly what store they came to. So retailers are pouring a lot of resources into this. This would just be another tool that we could use to combat organized retail crime in the state.
And if I could add to that as well, Representative Cannon, I'm on several different task forces where we are working with local, state, federal authorities with the loss prevention in those retail stores, and they are then sharing information as never before in order to go after and finding whatever areas that are vulnerable to continue to do what they can from both the store level, but also then to connect the dots. So we go after specifically, most of this is done by organized street gangs, that we can take the gang down in the process.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Hillary Thrower with Home Depot, I believe, right?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Hillary Thrower. I serve as Senior Manager of Government Relations for the Home Depot. The Home Depot is a Georgia-based company that employs more than 34,000 Georgians. So we really appreciate your time today to talk about this really important bill, Senate Bill 472. Thank you, Chairman Albers, for being a champion on this issue. You have worked tirelessly on this for years, so really appreciate your work. And as I know you've said before, these are not petty shoplifters. These are organized criminals. This is theft for greed, not theft for need, which is something that we really try to point out. As Ben mentioned, this is current state and federal law that was passed in 2022. And since those laws were passed, we have seen a drastic decrease in the amount of suspected stolen goods being sold on marketplaces that are required to comply with the Informed Consumers Act. So this bill simply closes that loophole. The intention was for it to apply to all online marketplaces, and we found some that were not complying with it due to the loophole, so this is just simply to close the loophole. So from a Home Depot perspective, combating organized retail crime is a top priority. As our ORC, Organized Retail Crime Investigator, last week said to the committee, we've invested in a data tool that has observed millions of dollars in suspicious listings that are actively being sold right now in Georgia on peer-to-peer marketplaces. And these are accounts selling hundreds of brand new Home Depot brands, many of which are private label or exclusive brands. And unfortunately, without any verification process by the online marketplace, criminals are hiding behind fake screen names and being anonymous. And it is making it impossible for law enforcement to track down these criminals. So as Ben said, these criminals have pivoted from the Amazons and the eBays who are complying under this law to the peer-to-peer marketplaces. So by passing laws before you like Senate Bill 472, you're helping make it harder for criminals to resell this product. The goal of the bill is to just add a deterrent. Aside from the financial impact that the Home Depot and other retailers have experienced from these organized criminals, we've also lost the lives of some associates. And we want our associates and we want our customers to feel safe when they walk into our doors. So as many pieces of legislation that get passed, there's some cleanup that needs to be done. And this is simply that, just a cleanup bill. So we ask that your favorable support for Senate Bill 472. To Representative Cannon's question, we're not coming to you with asks and not willing to do anything internally. So we have invested a lot at the Home Depot to tackle this internally. Since 2016, we have increased our internal asset protection team by over 180%. We've also invested in tool lockup. I'm sure when you visit our stores, you might get a little frustrated with the amount of power tools that are locked up, but unfortunately, that's now the reality because of these criminals. We've also started piloting smart shopping carts. So if you have a shopping cart full of stolen product and you go under the sensor, the shopping cart locks up, hoping to make it difficult for the criminals to get out the door as fast as they can, hoping to ditch the product. We're also inviting local law enforcement and elected officials to store walks. Many of you have been to your local store and got to see firsthand some of these issues that we are dealing with and some of the internal measures that we're using to combat it. And so we're hiring off-duty officers. So there's a lot that we are doing internally to try to combat this, but this is just another tool in the toolbox, no pun intended, to help fight this huge issue that we're seeing. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. We got one more. Got the mic.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee members. My name's Chuck Clay. I represent the chiefs of police, and as I always know, less of me is always better. So I simply want to add that the chiefs wholeheartedly support, your chiefs throughout the state of Georgia wholeheartedly support this bill. I'll just end by saying back in one of my previous careers as a DA, I handled several RICO multi-state theft operations, and when I tell you it's sophisticated and big business and frightening and beyond the scope and scale that most of us can comprehend on any and ongoing basis, any piece that closes loopholes, any piece that can put another, no pun intended, tool in the box is critical, because this is a monstrous national, international problem. So I congratulate the author and this committee, and with that, I'll hush up. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. So I see our former mayor of Sylvester, Representative Yerta. I'd entertain a motion if it's will.
What I was doing. I'll make a motion we do pass Senate Bill 472.
Thank you for that motion. Do I hear a second? Got a second. Any other discussion or questions to the author? Hearing none. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Hearing none, motion passes. Thank you, Senator, for this bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. I'm going to bring up this rules form and get your John Hancock if I
I'll
could.
be happy to do it. Thank you. Or is the room? Is the room out? All right. Grace, we think we still got the room. Okay, we got one more bill. I want to try to do. Okay, we've got a couple other things I'd like to take up. Where's our agenda? Senator Mallow, we have SB 534 to former House member.
right. That's
welcome,
right.
welcome to the. Is this sub? Yes. Thank you for bringing this measure. Was it a tight vote over in the Senate for this bill, or did they?
I think it was pretty much unanimous. We had one senator absent, Mr. Chairman.
So we've got a committee sub for this. LC 473044S. We will have left your language into the bill and added a bill that this committee passed previously by Representative Maynor that would require a retailer to submit the correct change or a credit back for sale. And I think this committee passed that unanimously, I believe. And so that is what this sub does. It just adds to your language and leaves your language. So I'm going to let you speak. This committee is heard and passed Representative Maynor's language, which is in this sub, but Grace just passed out. But talk to what your bill does to the committee, and we'll ask some questions on that.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to my friends in the House and former colleagues, thank you all for sticking with me today. The first half of this bill is to update the Fair Business Practices Act of 1975 with the language about a marketplace innkeeper. That simply will address folks that are Airbnb, VRBO, Expedia, anybody that books online. And so what this bill strikes to do is to prohibit the combining of taxes and fees into one item, and will require the detailed explanation of what taxes you've paid. As you all know, the state of Georgia require the local occupancy tax, the state hotel motel tax, the $5 hotel motel fee, and as a consumer, you should know what you have paid. And so the reason for this bill is just to help provide some clarity to that. So when folks go online and book something, many of my constituents, probably your constituents, will call you and say, hey, I'm paying a lot in taxes, and they send you a receipt, and it's taxes and fees. This will just help provide clarity so they know what's a tax and what's a fee and what type of tax, to better inform our constituency about what taxes and what fees they are paying. This bill, if you own Airbnbs, will absolutely do nothing that you will have to do. Airbnb is supportive of this measure, and the only thing that they asked, which we added on the floor of the Senate, was that this would become law in 2025. So even after it's passed and if signed by the governor in 2025, January 1, it would take effect, so they have time to update the IT infrastructure to make sure that the back-end reporting will happen. So no physical Airbnb owner or VRB owner will have to do anything. It will be all done through their online platform. And that's all the bill does, Mr. Chairman.
Well, thank you. I had the privilege of going off the weekend a few weeks ago down to St. Simon's, and when I got my bill from hotel, actually, what a VRBO, it was quite extensive, the taxes that local governments, state governments, all have put on those things. And so it's kind of eye-opening, but certainly adds a considerable amount to the cost of renting whether it's hotel or VRBO. So we got a couple of questions from the committee. Representative Camp.
Thank you, and thank you, Senator.
It's
nice to see you in the House again. Okay, so I too vacation, and I like staying in Airbnbs, VRBOs, because I like having a washing machine, quite frankly. And I am just a little bit curious, did something precipitate this? Were there complaints about this? Because I've had very positive experiences, I felt like, over the years. Is this bill just to make sure that everyone is complying with disclosing the fees and taxes?
Thank you, Representative Camp. I think that the bill does two things. I think it absolutely helps provide clarity to know what tax and what fees you are paying, so it's not lumped into one item if you choose to stay at an Airbnb. I've stayed at Airbnbs as well. And it also creates an opportunity, I think, for the market to also inspect itself. because now you'll know if they're collecting all the taxes and fees. As you all know, the hotel owners have to pay the full freight and collect all the taxes that are out there. But if you're a marketplace innkeeper, with the digital platforms coming out each day, we just want to make sure that everybody's playing by the same set of rules. And so by requiring that disclosure, will also show consumers that these folks online are playing by the same rules as the physical local entities.
All right, thank you so much.
Representative Willis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Senator. Question for you. So then would it be safe to say that this adjustment would just provide clarification to the consumer, which would then likely reduce the amount of consumer complaint based upon ambiguity? And also, is it a back-end technological adjustment that, say, an Airbnb or VRBO would have to make just for that information to then be transmitted to the consumer? No cost to the consumer, just edification for them?
Absolutely, that's all it would do. And again, I think most of those online platforms have the ability to do that. And I think as a consumer, when you purchase an item, you get a receipt. You want to see what the sales tax was. Are there any additional taxes on it? Because folks do want to know what they're paying and to who and how much. And that's how I think legislation is informed, when our folks can see what they're paying and what we're charging, what we're taxing where. The better our electorate is on taxes and how much we're collecting, the better informed they may be on wanting to change some policy.
Chairman Meeks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just for point of clarification, the Section 3 that the Senator had mentioned on the original passed bill was amended on the Senate floor to become law January 1, 2025. I do not see that in the substitute here, so we may want to amend the substitute to add that language back in, Mr. Chairman, so that it does become effective 2025.
Thank you for that observation, very astute. Paul Hebig, our lead counsel, can you provide us some wording for that? Okay. So, seeing no other questions, we're in a posture to a motion to pass the amendment, to pass the bill as pass the amendment that was added, Representative Mainer's bill onto this. So do I hear a motion for that? A motion for the change of the date. Okay. So we need, Paul, you got, we're going to make it effective July.
It's January 1st, 2025.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. A motion to accept the amendment to January 2025. Do I hear a motion for that? Motion, second. Any questions on that? Adding that to the bill. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hear none, that is added. So now we just need a motion to pass LC 473044S. That's the sub to SB 534 in front of you, which includes both your language and Representative Mainer's language. So got a motion, got a second. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye. Great work, committee. Got one more piece of business, and we won't have to be here tomorrow.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Everybody can sleep late. I saw a member of the Department of Ag here earlier, but as I mentioned several committee meetings ago, the House Ag Committee is responsible for appointing a member of the ex officio member of the Commodity Commission. We have multiple commodity commissions, as y'all know, throughout the state, and have several commissioners, being one ex officio, and this is another position. The Senate appoints a position, and if I'm not mistaken, I think maybe Farm Bureau President might be or ex officio position. So Buddy Legier, who has been an ex officio appointment for the House for many, many years, has reached a time in his career that he wanted to not be considered. I have not received any other suggestions from this committee. The Commissioner Harper and I have talked over the last few days about possible people who are qualified, who have experience with commodity commissions and supportive of those. And I suggested a longtime friend of mine, Al Pearson from Fort Valley, who is a peach grower and pecan grower, has a very much diversified large farm there. Al, I've known my whole entire career, and you see his bio in front of you, quite impressive. Very successful farm, Pearson's farmed with his son in Fort Valley. And that would be my suggestion to the committee, if it's the will of the committee, to appoint him. So I hear a motion. Got a second? Any other nominations? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank y'all. Al will do a great job working with our commodity commissions and our commissioner. With that, I don't know of any other business to come before the committee. If something does come up, I see our new father in the audience. Will, you want to tell the committee a little bit about what happened a few days ago?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ember delivered our second daughter last Wednesday. Heidi Charlotte Bentley was born in Macon, 8 pounds, 12 ounces, and 20 inches long. So she's at home. Ember and the baby are both doing great, and her little sister Holland is very proud and very protective. So we're happy to be back home and getting a little bit of rest.
Well, great news. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. Adam, I see you. Things still going well with your news? Okay. No cold feet yet. Thank you. Okay. Y'all, I thank y'all, this committee. I appreciate it. We're going to try to get a picture one day on the House floor if we can together. I really appreciate y'all's support this year. If something unexpected does come up, we'll call a meeting. But we got a lot of work, a lot of bills to do, and if things that have come through this committee, y'all got a lot of passion for. I hope you engage with leadership to make sure we get them through rules and onto the House floor for a vote. So have a great rest of the day.